I think we're seeing a lot of change and partly dramatic change, obviously geopolitically, but also economically. And companies need to adapt. That's one thing, but the overall driver is more sort of I think in the nature of the asset management industry becoming more and more passive. We have about 50% of the public equity market in sort of invests in sort of more passive asset managers, be it ETFs or actively actively managed index funds or actively managed ETFs or index funds. And the group of investors that actually spends time, effort, and money to get behind sort of the details of companies becomes smaller and smaller, and that's driving sort of the what broadly is called activism.
Right. You mentioned there changes in the political scene, but I would like to understand whether actually changes in monetary policy have made investors perhaps a little more active at this stage. We have seen an unprecedented level of increases in interest rates. They're starting to come down at this stage, but has this volatility actually made investors a lot more, active, for the lack of a better word?
Obviously, first of all, return requirements on equities, goes up, and therefore, sort of a bit of maybe what we've seen as a complacency on the return front in equity investing, has subsided now, and therefore, there's just a need for companies not only to adapt to a different interest rate environment, but also the requirements for higher returns on the equity side have just risen.
I would also like to understand what are perhaps the most common demands at this stage. For a while, it was environmentally conscious investors that were driving some of these changes. That seems to have changed now. What are, the most common demands? What sort of changes do investors would like to see?
Well, I think there is at the moment also, a large focus really on capital allocation. I think sort of, overall, obviously, activism is about sort of holding management teams accountable, in a more different or in a more difficult operating environment, decisions need to be made quicker, and hence sort of also on the operating side, I think we see more and more requests around sort of rethinking corporate structure. But I think the one of the and it's quite natural in a changing interest rate environment, calling for rethinking and adaptation of capital allocation policies is top of mind.